Welcome to this webinar where we will introduce Salesforce for Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs. I'm really excited to have this opportunity for all of you to see how we have customized Salesforce for one of our long-standing clients, on-the-road lending, or OTRL. But first, a quick introduction to Craftsman and who we are. So for Craftsman Technology Group, and you guys should be seeing my screen here, our mission is to help nonprofits grow and thrive. As a Salesforce partner, by aligning strategy and business processes with tools and technology, we deliver transformative projects, best-in-class industry solutions, and enduring partnerships. And one of our primary focus areas is an industry near and dear to my heart, the community development industry. I spent 10 years working for a CDFI called Axion, at one point head of its operations, so very familiar with the challenges faced by CDFIs. Since then, I've worked with all types of community development organizations, including economic development institutions, housing trusts, and energy-oriented CDFIs. So I've obviously started some introductions here, so I want to do a quick round among some of the Craftsman team we have here, starting with BJ. So BJ, if you don't mind, a quick introduction, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is BJ Cordes. I'm the founder and principal at Craftsman Technology Group. I'm really excited to talk a bit about the work we've done with on-the-road lending. We'll again say my heartfelt thanks to our co-presenter, Michelle Corson today. Michelle, we're super excited to have you here and we love working with you. So thanks again.
Okay, great. Thanks, BJ. Brad, please.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I had a dog problem. Hi, everybody. Brad West here. I'm the account executive at Craftsman, and I try and just help people, learn more about their situation and see how we might be able to help. So thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. And Corey, please.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Corey. I am a customer success manager here at Craftsman on our managed services team, and I have the pleasure of working with OTRL as their customer success manager, and I get to talk with Michelle and her team every week to help them work on their Salesforce goals, work on making changes, and just overall health of their organization.
Okay, great. So I will be introducing Michelle in a second, but thank you all. A couple of housekeeping items. First of all, please note that this session is being recorded. Also, if you have any questions, please put them in a chat and we will address them after the demo. So now, turning to the agenda of this meeting, you'll see that we'll be covering the following. So first of all, I'll start off by introducing Michelle, and she'll talk more about on-the-road lending. Then she'll talk about OTRL's, or on-the-road lending, Salesforce journey, starting with the purpose of the engagement with Craftsman Technology Group. Afterwards, she'll describe how Salesforce for CDFIs has met OTRL's needs over time, and how she's leveraging Craftsman's managed services offering for continuous improvement and growth. She'll talk about results. It's been an amazing journey in terms of growth and impact. Then afterwards, Corey will do a brief demo of OTRL's Salesforce environment. After the session, Brad will follow up with the CDFIs participating here to answer any questions. Okay, great. So now let me talk about Michelle, and simply put, Michelle is amazing. She is a visionary, and I've met few CEOs who really know their technology like the way she does. She's passionate about her causes, and she makes things happen. She makes great things happen to achieve them. In 2011, she founded Champion Impact Capital to encourage impact investing in Texas, and she also served as CEO of the Real Estate Council. But even beforehand, before all this though, she had foreseen what having an affordable loan for a reliable car could mean to people in terms of mobility, economic opportunity, and dignity. As a result, in 2013, she founded On the Road Lending. I am now going to pass the mic to Michelle to add to this incredible story, and thank you so much, Michelle. Really appreciate your being here.
Thanks, Lily. That's a kind introduction. Appreciate it. One of the things that Lily didn't say is that I'm a car nut. I absolutely love cars. And I know a lot of you in some of these cities that you're in have really robust transit systems and may not feel like you need one. But what we've found all across the United States is that it's very difficult for most people to function if they don't have reliable transportation. And it's very limiting on where they can work. If you're relegated to only taking a job that's within walking distance of a bus stop, that's pretty limiting for a lot of people. As Lily mentioned, I'm in Texas. We're based in Dallas, Fort Worth area, and it's very large here, as you know. And our mass transit system here actually is the largest in North America in terms of light rail miles traveled, but it only covers about 8% of our land area and accesses less than 15% of the jobs. So it's a very poor substitute for having a car. There are other things that having a car can really benefit you on besides just the kind of work that you do. It can impact your health. It can impact your ability to get good food. It can improve your ability to get better education and all kinds of things. So it's really an important thing to have throughout the United States. And we looked at creating a loan fund alongside our services entity as a way of seeing if we could bring down the cost of ownership of transportation across the value chain. Our belief is that if we can make cars affordable and the whole transportation value chain, the cost of insurance and the cost of maintenance and everything else, that it would give people an opportunity to really build prosperity in much the way that Henry Ford looked at it 100 years ago. And in the 1920s, GDP grew by 70%, personal wealth doubled. The number of cars in 1910 was 450,000, and by 1930 there were 23 million. And there's been some pretty interesting studies done on the impact to a person's wealth of having access to transportation. So Lily, you want to go on to the next slide? All right. So On the Road Lending is really working along all of our entities. We actually now have 8 businesses that are part of our umbrella. And as I mentioned, we're really just trying to bring down the cost of vehicle ownership across all elements of that. The cost of financing, the cost of buying, the cost of maintaining, the cost of insuring, and the benefits that we're looking to achieve for our families is helping them to improve their credit. Our goal is for them to not need us anymore. We want them to use us as a bridge between the subprime world and the prime world and get beyond us to where they can participate more fully in the traditional financial system. Purchasing fuel efficient, reliable cars. We care about the environment, and we know the criticism of cars is that they pollute and contribute to greenhouse gases. And I'm pleased to share that our environmental impact is a 35% reduction on average of fuel consumption and greenhouse gases. And it's really important for working families who have limited assets to actually be able to purchase a car that is under warranty. And one of the biggest things that derails a low-income family is if they have a significant car repair bill comes due and they don't have the cash. And so they find themselves with that really difficult decision of, do I make the car payment or do I fix the car because I can't do both? So getting them into something that's fuel efficient and reliable is really important. And lastly, our CDFI is making them an affordable loan. Okay, you can go on next there. Thank you. Where does Craftsman fit into all of this and Salesforce? We actually got started in about 2013, and interestingly, we started with Salesforce, but we knew absolutely nothing about it. And we went on, I'm embarrassed to say, for about 4 years before we met everyone over at Craftsman, and muddled through with a Salesforce system that was not well designed. For those of you, I'm assuming everybody here has Salesforce, but we had no architecture at all. Every single thing, every field was on the contact object. Everything was there. We had no workflows. We had no dashboards. We had a lot of reports. I'll give us that. And I will tell you that despite having just a little bit of a background in technology, I actually majored in computer science for a year. I hated Salesforce. I hated it. And we had, 9 employees and everybody else loved it and they used it all the time. And I hated it. I didn't understand it. So we decided through a nice grant that we received from a partner of ours that we needed new technology. We had a lot of friction in our processes that we felt like needed to be improved. We had a lot of need for better digitization of data that we had, better ability to analyze it, lots and lots of reasons. And so we met Craftsman. I went up to Boston and sat down with BJ and Lily, and we spent a lot of time hammering out what it was that we were hoping to accomplish. And BJ convinced me that we needed to start from scratch. And I was a very skeptical customer on that front. I did not believe that that was the way to go. I thought it would be way too expensive, too much time. And he convinced me that rather than trying to figure out some way of manipulating an inferior system or trying to figure out something else, we should just start and design it the right way from the beginning. And of course, he was right on that. Our goals, of course, as I mentioned, was really, and as is said here, we had a very manual process. It was not secure. We were emailing documents back and forth, tax returns, pay stubs, things that had confidential information in it. We had coaches that were having a hard time, and they function as underwriters, coach underwriter, knowing where our clients were in the process. Our fund started out very small. We only did 16 loans in our first year and 18 our second. But by the time we got to Craftsman, we had a pretty significant pipeline of people that were coming into our system and applying, and not a good way of managing that at all. Our customer user experience, I would rate as poor. It was very clunky and difficult, and we needed a better integrated file management system. And, as with all technology, Lily, go on to the next slide. What we were really looking for was for our system to help us with decision-making, give us data in a more actionable format where we can look at things, analyze it, understand what's going on, and use it to help us to be better at what it is that we're trying to do. And so we really needed some help. And once we got to Craftsman, they really helped us to sit down and look at what was it that we were trying to really do, and what kinds of things did we really hope to accomplish. If you want to go on to the next slide, Lily. So Craftsman, of course, uses a managed services approach to things. They build the system for you, but that's only part of it. And once you get through the process of actually building it, it's what you do with it once you've got it up and running. And of course, with all technology and with all databases, you're constantly iterating. And Corey can tell you that we're always saying, okay, well, now I need to do this, and now we need to do that. And, how do we deal with it? I found as we got into building the system and really using it, ironically, I became the super user in our company, went from the person that hated Salesforce to absolutely loving it. And I just dug into it because we were building something that was expensive and difficult and complicated, and I needed to understand how it worked. And I found, and still to this day find, that there's a cost benefit analysis that we have to do frequently with what we're trying to accomplish. And I want to learn and I want to know how to do things, but there becomes a tipping point where the marginal value of any more time spent is not there. And it's much better just to go to the experts and have Corey and everybody fix things for us or create things. So I will say also that it, as I think BJ alluded to, this has been a partnership for us. And we find that they are extremely helpful in letting us learn, not saying, just let us handle it. They're very open about answering questions, and that helps us to solve as many of the problems as we can ourselves, which I think is really important for making sure that your operations are really efficient and that you're able to learn and use a fully functional system. I'm daily learning about new tools and new things within Salesforce that I didn't know we could do, or how to, how things worked. And I love that about it. It's kind of a constant sense of discovery that we're on. So, Lily, do you want to go on to the next slide? Do we have a slide for outcomes? Yeah, okay. So this came from our annual report last year, and I think it gives you some sense of some of the kinds of metrics that we're looking at. We expanded, we're now in 4 states making auto loans. We are also now, as we briefly touched on in the beginning, doing some other initiatives like On the Road Garage, which is a collision center, and also training people to work in this field. And we can track a lot of information in here. We're looking at some of our goals, like we in Texas and Dallas, where I'm based, our projected demographics here are expected to be about 60% Hispanic in Dallas County within the next 20 years. And our percentage of Hispanic families that we were serving was less than 15%. And so we were not reflective of the community that we were in. And those of you who are CDFIs know that it's important that you're really serving your purpose by reflecting the community that you're in. And many of our other markets are heavily Hispanic as well now. So we wanted to track that. We've had, looking at trying to increase our efficiency, make our user experience better. And so we looked at what's the time to delivery? How long does it take from someone from the time that they apply and to the time that they get into their car? And a lot of other things that we were wanting to look at. It's not shown on here, but looking at things like I mentioned, our environmental footprint, and understanding the demographics that we're serving, and evaluating also how much better people's lives are, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to accomplish. And we can measure that in a lot of different ways. So again, I think technology is a tool, and we use it to help us make decisions. And if we're only capitalizing on just a small portion of that technology's capability, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. So with that, I guess, Lily, do you want to turn it over to Corey to do a demo of our systems?
Yep, will do. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share, and Corey, it's on to you now. Thank you.
All right, let me just share my screen here for everybody. All right, is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes.
Nod, yes, positive. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for Michelle. It's so nice to talk with everybody today. So we're going to just take a brief walk through some of OTRL's processes and how they're utilizing the system in their day-to-day. Of course, Michelle, if you have anything to add in and you want to chime in, by all means, please stop me, and we'll talk about anything else if you want to highlight anything else. But yeah, we'll jump right in. So one thing that we'll start on is kind of mapping out the process of application coming through, because we're going to look more on the lending side today. And this side is OTRL uses form assembly to bring in all their applications into Salesforce. So this is a look right at form assembly as we were in it. And this is the application that we're using. It's a short application with 4 pages, which is not too bad, with some conditional sections based on information that's input. And we're going to take a look at what that actually looks like to an applicant as we move forward. But you can see just some basic information on how like a tool like this is an easy layout to create the forms that they need and customize and create new forms if need be. What's also nice is we have this set up to be able to switch between Spanish and English. So it actually links to the other Spanish form back and forth. This is a direct connection to Salesforce. So when this form is submitted, it actually sends all the information to Salesforce and creates the application, the records. And we're gonna look at that connector now. This is after form submitted. If we click configure, you'll see that this is connected to their org. And we have an option to create records on all of the objects in Salesforce based on the relationships. So this is the standard contact object that we're scrolling through, and all these fields then exist in Salesforce and are mapping back. And there will be formulas that map back and criteria that checks different things based on those cases. We're also mapping to custom objects like application, their coaching checklist, their work history, their references, and we're going to look at all of those things briefly here in our demo, just so we can see what that looks like. This is what an applicant actually sees. So I took the liberty of filling this out, but just so we had some test data. This is what an applicant would do is if they clicked on the actual application on OTRL's website, filled it in as Harry Potter for our magic fans or muggles, it's okay. But we wanted to make sure that nobody approved their loans by mistake. But you can see too is we have some options too is with a short form, you also have the case of uploading some files to the form as well. Although these are not required, this is a space that we can then push the files into form assembly. They're sent to Salesforce, and then they're going to be put into a secure box integration that we'll look at later too as well. Not too bad as you walk through that. And then the last page is just an agreement, and then also letting the applicant know that OTRL is going to pull their credit to analyze it as we look through that. When they click submit, it is going to go to a nice little thank you page. There we go. And then what happens is directly thereafter, the applicant receives an email directly from Salesforce, automated based on the workflows that they have in place. So as those applications are submitted, an email is fired off to the applicant that's been created based on that information, and then has a couple other pieces of information and 2 other links in here that are also important. One is that top link to connect their bank account through a third-party service called Plaid. So they have the option to link their bank account. So if some of you folks have gone and gotten a mortgage, a lot of times those underwriters do want to see your bank account. And additionally, there's a link to submit additional documentation. So if you didn't fill out, in this case, it shows us our app number, who uploaded it, because it's smart enough to do this, where it's pre-populating some of the information based on that link. It also says we've already uploaded the 3 documents that we needed. If I hadn't uploaded those documentation, it would also inform me what was missing so that I could upload it, or I could also upload additional documents if need be. So a very helpful way to collect a lot of data automatically without having to go back and forth via email for all of the folks in the staff. What's also important is we also see because we collect some information in the application about the employer as a reference, this also fires off another email to that employer reference. In that case, they can go into this email, they'll see this email come to them, and then they'll say, hey, we can click on this link to submit a reference. This reference is also another form assembly form that feeds data back into the corresponding record that we created on the initial pull. And this way they can fill it out, submit that information, and also show you where that goes and how it's connected to the application so that we can pull as much data automatically as possible. We're going to look at the applications as they arrive in On the Road Lending's Salesforce instance. So we're sitting on the applications object. These are a couple different queues that we've put in place. So part of some of the work we've done as managed services is to help make things a little bit easier to see. So we've worked with Bill and his team to come up with different queues so that applications move through different criteria as needed. One of those is the pre-approval queue. So this essentially, we've set up criteria with the lending team through a series of meetings. And if an application upon submission meets all of these requirements and the logic, it then gets populated automatically into this queue to be reviewed. And this is kind of a priority list. So if you're pre-approved, you're a very, very good candidate. For our regular intake, it's a different set of criteria, similar, but it's kind of keeping a priority to understand what kind of, everybody's coming in through this one other space. Variety of filters, just not quite as stringent as our pre-approval queue. And then we're going to look at the final queue of course, these are all list views that can be customized, is the qualification review. In this case, these would be candidates that aren't quite qualified, that really don't meet the expectations, but they should still be talked to, contacted, and then maybe coached into becoming a better applicant or borrower in that case. The lending team also can look at using a lending pipeline and dashboard. So this is something that we put in together recently for Bill and his team as they've kind of walked through some of the stuff of understanding some metrics as it's still being developed, but understanding too is how long are applications sitting? How long are they in funding? How many are these queues that are coming back where we're looking at how many candidates are sitting in different queues, or how many are really pre-qualified, how many are, and it gives us a little bit of better look at understanding the dynamics that we have with those applications. And if that criteria should be adjusted to make sure that people are not meeting the standards or meeting the standards, and we need to open them up a little bit more. It's an idea too of also understand resourcing so we can see how our coaches are having, or our underwriters, how much is on their plate right now, and then what's being approved, how much is being approved, what does the intake look like, all of those things. Of course, there'll be more dashboards. We have some new ones, plans to do some additional ones that are looking more on a monthly or quarterly basis rather than the weekly. This is a look into the actual application record. So there's Harry Potter. He's now applied. We have some of the basic information being filtered over from the application. And some of those are being also calculated fields based on the information that we submitted. And we're going to take a look at all those related lists that are associated with all those custom objects that are being populated based on the application as well. But all the information we submitted here is being captured in Salesforce. You can see also there's a lot of fields to be able to populate as this applicant goes through the underwriting process. So as the coach works with an applicant, they're going to fill out more and more information to collect a really, really strong picture of what this background looks like for this applicant, and also to collect all those metrics and data that, of course, Michelle's looking for to understand where is this client sitting, or where does this applicant sit, and how does that reflect on their mission. So you can see all the way down to closing through approval. We're going to get down here to post-loan outcomes, looking at credit scores post-loan, and seeing the effect that a vehicle could have on their lives. In addition to, you have the box integration down here. And we'll touch a little bit more on that too, but the files that would come over from the application would then be securely stored in box and accessible, and then tied to the specific record application in Salesforce. So a lot of data on one page, but all very, very important in the lending process, and then also easy to update for these coaches as they walk through it. And some of these fields that are calculated to help them kind of knock out stuff based on different equations. We'll also look at the related lists. So we have a little view over here of the related quick lists. You can jump on those quick, but often or not, we have a nice related tab over here to grab onto. So we have a bunch of different related lists, including our plaid status. We'll talk about all of these. But I'd like to highlight, of course, is that we have our budget. So a budget record is created based on the financial information the applicant gives us. The references, so this includes a personal reference and the employee reference that I mentioned before that we saw, got an email sent off to. And then we also have address history and work history that are created to be able to track how long a person's been working at with an employer, how long they've lived in the address, and some of those records then feed into some of the calculations and some of the risk that I know the lending team is looking at when analyzing if this applicant is a good choice to move forward with. So we'll look at the budget record now. So this is the initial budget created during intake. And you can see it has a description right away, auto-populated based on that. All the little information that we can have coming out of that application. This would be a place, of course, where the coach would look at initially. Often the coach could also create their own budget after a discussion with the applicant and then revise it a little bit, because there is a place to check which budget is the final budget. So this way they can be taken into consideration by the lending team when they're analyzing. In addition, we have this references section. So just as we looked into the employee reference and we saw that email come through where a survey was available, this is where that information would be populated and tied back so that we could now have an employer reference. This includes a couple of different reference categories and sections on this page so that they're all tied together. So it is one record type, but nice and easy, and then just pulls back, and most importantly is associated with the correct application. And here's our personal reference, as Hermione will lend her personal reference to Harry's application. But we do want to track as much of that information as possible, especially if we're going to be reaching out to any of these references, and we're kind of keeping aligned in the mission. Excellent. And let's take a look at address history briefly. Again, pre-populating all the information we're pulling off of this to understand a little bit more information about what this applicant does and a couple auto-calculating fields with formulas that are pulling in the information based on how long they've been there to help in their calculations and understand what the risk involved.
Hey, Corey.
Sure.
It might be good just to share with everybody that we use character-based lending in our approach rather than credit scores and risk-based pricing. We pull a credit report so that we can go over that with our clients and have the ability to track improvement over time. But some of these things may be unusual to some lenders in looking at, why do you care how long they've been in their same job or whatever. We're looking for character things and trying to capture stability and motivation and willingness and other kinds of things in here. So
Perfect. Oh, thank you for clarifying, Michelle. I appreciate it. That's super helpful. And I guess for everybody to know, I mean, this is, again, a customized solution to understand OTRL's business practices. So we're going to look a little bit at the vehicles checklist as well, too. So understanding this vehicle's custom object, it kind of has twofold. So as Michelle mentioned too, with tracking impact and looking at their environmental impact, you can have more than one vehicle. So often or not, we'll have a previous vehicle associated with an application because we want to know what were they driving before and what is the vehicle that they're trying to replace. And then what we would do is after the application is submitted, there'll be the new vehicle associated and they'll both be there, but we want to track those. So we're going to look a little bit about this record. There's a ton of information about tracking the basics about the vehicle, but there's also some lending information that makes its way in here because the newer vehicle will be tied to the lending side. So for OTRL, you guys use AutoPal as your loan servicing solution. So some of that AutoPal information makes its way into Salesforce to be able to understand and see in a reporting wise for the team so they can see in dashboards or on a report. And we want to tie that because that vehicle then is essentially tied to that loan. So it's a little bit more of a stronger connection. So you won't see as much of that information included or filled out maybe on your previous vehicle, but on the newer vehicle record once lent, that would be more of that would be filled out and completed so that those reports are easier to see for the portfolio health.
Yeah, I would add our loan servicing system, AutoPal, is wonderful in a lot of ways, but it does not have the ability to slice and dice data and view it in as great as Salesforce. So we do a little bit of duplicative vehicle and information entry in here just because we like what we can see with it and analyze it.
Definitely helpful. And we will look at one of those dashboards at the tail end of this little demo of seeing that. But yes, it's definitely, I know in our conversations and with the team, it is about seeing the data visually and understanding the portfolio and seeing it in a simpler way so that you can see the trends, which is really important. And this also speaks to the environmental impact report because here we're using those vehicle records to understand the differences between environmental impact between 1 and 2 vehicles. So something else we worked on with Michelle, and it's always ongoing and being tweaked a little bit to capture more data. But the idea is, looking at previous vehicles versus a newer vehicle and what is that environmental impact and the change with greenhouse gases on that side. Another custom object that's pretty important to the underwriting process is this coaching checklist. So this is automatically created with some basic information, but this allows the coaches or underwriters to go through and check information as they go through the process to make sure that they're highlighting everything that they possibly need to catch and capture about this applicant. So they're all check boxes, nice and simple, but we're also going to pop back over to see the box integration so that we could say that there's another piece of that. But all of this needs to be completed before it can actually be submitted for approval. So this is kind of a nice way to ensure that this data is being captured somewhere and that is being a nice solid checklist. As we pop back over, we're going to see too is you have a checklist history, which is also super helpful. So the checklist history then will show us when it was updated and who it updated. So if I went in and changed something and inadvertently made a mistake, somebody else could pop in a check, or we could see when I felt it was important to change that. So those are some history tracking things going on that side of space. As we scroll down here on the application, the idea too is with this coaching checklist is that would be a really, it's the use of the Box integration. So not only are we having the applicant submit files securely through Box, but then also your coach could be adding documentation and updates in the Box as well. Once everything has been completed and it looks like we're ready to move forward and Harry's going to get his loan, we're going to go through and submit it for approval to Bill. So right now, there's only a couple stipulations that we need. We need to be able to finish, make sure that a couple different pieces are completed. This includes the status being active. It has to be in a coaching stage or underwriting stage. And the coaching checklist has to be 100% complete. If all of those are completed, we can then submit it for approval. In this case, I'm logged in under Kristen because she has security to submit for approval. So there's some security around different approval processes in the Salesforce. And if we submit it, it's now open for approval and it's locked. What'll happen next is I'm going to log out. I'm going to log back in on the home screen as Bill, who would be approving this at this case. And we're going to show you what it looks like to see the approval process, which is also super easy. So as we log in as Bill, we can now see that he has one item to approve, the application I submitted, or Kristen submitted for Harry. In this case, he can look at, of course, he has multiple items if things are very busy. He has lots of things to look at. There's a related list that's built out here. It's customized with different information, can be altered to see everything. But he can click on that application and it shows a basic outline of what's going on that the application is pending. In this case, he can approve, reject, or reassign, and ask more information. Now we look a little bit into what Michelle mentioned of tracking some loan servicing information and into a dashboard, so it's a little bit more visually helpful. And of course, there's lots of reports, but since the dashboard is nice and visual, this is one way that we're tracking vehicle loans, essentially understanding, if clients are in trouble or having issues, what does that look like? Understanding portfolio health, what could be past due. And I know, as we've spoken with Bill and his team, these are some of the reports that end up being like extremely important, understanding health and what need to be worked on and who to reach out to. But it's a nice way of seeing too, is that you're bringing in information from both systems and being able to bring it in from your loan servicing side in AutoPal, being able to see and visualize some of those aspects here in Salesforce. So that's mostly my demo. Michelle, would you like to add anything? By all means.
Yeah, I mean, you might look at just a couple of other dashboards that we have just to show a little bit about some of our decisioning. There's you might look at the business development dashboard.
I can pull up some stuff. I'm just a little, these are all pre-recorded because it has client information on it.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's fine. I don't
Is that okay? Yeah.
In that, but that's okay. So we have actually got quite a bit of dashboards that we use, and many of them are more visual than this, which is pretty much like charts and tables and things. Having some of the other information in a different kind of way where you can see where people are in different phases is useful. I would also add that I never really used Salesforce until pretty recently for tracking grant activity. And I've really embraced that now that we've been working on a lot of them and getting more people involved in it. It's also very helpful for that. We use the opportunities object to track that information.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is wonderful. I'm going to stop sharing now and turn it back over to the rest of the team.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much, Corey. Thank you, Michelle. Well, at this point, we are going to open up the floor for questions. So either if you want to speak up, feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to throw it in the chat, I can read it out when there's an opening question. So fire away. Let me know if there's any questions here. Wow, pretty quiet group. Sure, someone's wondering about something about the demo or the system.
Hi, this is Tim Green from ECDI. We're a small business lender in Columbus, Ohio. And that last point that Michelle mentioned about tracking grants and outcomes and stuff like that, That is super important and one of the things that's lacking from our current system. So if you could kind of like maybe even run through exactly how that might work or something, because I'll just tell you, one of the questions that we are super concerned with and we're hoping to get a platform to track would be applications that are in process and what funds those applications would be eligible for instance. We use lots of different money from municipalities, from private donors and things like that. And we are trying to plan ahead of time what applications might use what pots of money.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's at all how you guys run your business, but.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you really are able to customize, as with everything in Salesforce, what you're doing. And you can definitely segregate by different types of funds or sources of grants, how you're performing on them, where they are in the process. I particularly like the Kanban view where I can see, okay, here's prospecting, here's things we've submitted, here's things that are being considered, here's all the ones that we've won, the millions and millions of dollars. I wish that be on that side. Your win rate, looking at those kinds of things, you know, are you doing better this year or worse or whatever? You can definitely do all of that for sure. And it's usable and very functional.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Renata had a question. So you also have to get Plaid, Box, and form assembly?
Not necessarily. And I'm sure that, you know, Corey or BJ could probably talk a little bit about use of form assembly. And we use that as our front end to capture the application, but it may be possible to do that directly within Salesforce. I think that they have some tools for that. And Plaid is also something that we just optionally got. Most banks use that as a way of providing a read-only access to what's going on in someone's bank account. We like it and think it's pretty useful to have. And Box, most organizations that are dealing with a lot of clients need some kind of good file management system. Some use Dropbox. We had that for a while, but it wasn't scalable as we got really, really large. And we have employees all over the country. So having something that can be very, very sure that it's tied specifically to that applicant and that everybody across the country has the ability to access it, it's a worthwhile investment, I think, to have something like that.
Okay, thank you, Renata and Michelle.
I'll just add a tiny bit to that if I could.
Yes.
I think it's a particular strength of the Salesforce platform, right? I mean, we've kind of seen how we can configure the Salesforce platform for all manner of use cases, right? Whether you're budget or collateral or credit or applications, there's an enormous amount of breadth to it, but also recognizing that there's a number of other solutions that you might be using. And Michelle kind of touched on, you might be using Box or Dropbox or SharePoint or all manner of things. And the availability of Salesforce as for integration is incredibly powerful in the CDFI space, right? Not every CDFI we work with is necessarily looking for an integrated credit pull system, but those that are, there's a number of solutions that are just readily drawn directly into the platform. There's other organizations might say, well, we use this risk scoring and analysis tool that we want to pull that data set in, and again, really one of the strengths of the Salesforce platform is it allows you to leverage those tools that have proven incredibly helpful to your organization. You don't have to abandon those things necessarily that are super helpful, because you can, Salesforce has the openness or availability to call those services or call those solutions onto the platform, as opposed to require that you conform to a closed system. So it's there's an incredible strength there. Not a requirement to go and buy 20 apps to make Salesforce work, but there's that option to use almost a best of breed approach, knowing that your platform is strong and open enough to be able to pull it all together. So
thank you, BJ. So next question we have from Juan. Do files get uploaded directly to Box from Form Assembly, or do you have an automation in Salesforce that moves the files to Box?
I think Corey should answer that one.
Yeah, so it does go into Salesforce, and then it is moved to Box thereafter, and then removed from Salesforce. So the form assembly Box integration is not. It goes directly to Salesforce as an attachment, which you could still use form assembly for, and we do use clients that do not, that upload the files directly to Salesforce. The only things that you see with an issue with uploading a lot of files or high volume files to Salesforce is starting to hit your file limits. So just to be careful with that, but a Box keeps it a nice way to integrate things, to move them forward and keep them very organized and accessible to have secure upload and download, especially if you're going to be working with a client over like an underwriting process. It allows you that one place of source of truth to kind of be able to push back and forth between the underwriter and an applicant uploading data. But it is, after it hits Salesforce, it moves to Box and then it's removed from Salesforce.
And that's all automatic, right?
Correct.
Okay, terrific. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah, this is Tim Green again.
Yes, go ahead.
What are the, and maybe this might be a user thing, Michelle or someone, but what is the ease with random reports? So I bring that up again in the, you might have a funder that asks for a certain demographic piece. So how flexible is Salesforce in maybe building out a unique report or something along those lines?
Oh, it's extremely flexible. I think the one piece of that is you obviously to put together a report, you need to have data. So it needs to be something that you're capturing. But we are constantly adding fields for that very reason, because there's so many things that we want to run reports on. Demographics certainly is one of them, but and it's very easy for you to do that on your own. That's not complicated, and setting up the views and how the page looks, that, putting data where you want it is very simple. And I think that's one of the strengths of Salesforce, is that you can really manipulate the data to see whatever it is that you need to see and generate reports for your funders. You can also generate dashboards around all of that, where, if you had a commitment that you wanted 80% of your clients to be, Native American women or whatever it is, you can set it up so you can see how you're doing at hitting those targets that you have.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, then I have a question from, now they're coming in here, from Brian. Michelle, how do you measure/track efficiency per loan, since you've automated some important aspects of your lending?
Yeah. So because we use character-based lending, the rate at which a client moves through our system, it is really dependent upon them for getting information back to us. But we also want to look and see if there are any problem areas in efficiency within our coaching. Like, I look at how long has it been between contacts, if they've contacted them, was it another week that went by, or 2 weeks, or whatever, or a couple days. So we can look at those kinds of things. We look at time to decisioning, how quickly are coaches making decisions, and is it on them versus on the client? There's a lot of different ways of measuring. We can see if there's a big backlog in one stage. Do we have 100 people in intake and only 5 people in coaching? Well, then there's a problem getting them out of intake and into coaching. And, so looking at those kinds of, there's a lot of different tools, and you can set up whatever kinds of formulas or processes in there that you need to be able to analyze that.
Thank you, Michelle and Brian. Juan has a follow-up question about Box. Is a folder for the uploaded documents also automatically created in Box, or does one have to create a folder and then manually tie it to an application record? I guess, Corey, if you don't know.
It's automatically created. Yep.
Okay.
The Box folder ID is automatically created so that there's no tying back manually or anything like that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Juan and Corey. Joe, from Joe. Does OTRL have a dedicated employee that manages Salesforce?
I wish. I wish. No, we actually have several people in our organization that are very conversant in Salesforce now, have used it a lot and are comfortable being in the admin role. We try to get everyone in the business to really know and learn how to use this pretty fully, but no. When we went through the building process, we had a consultant that was helping us briefly, and that just really didn't work. And so I had to dig in and learn this myself to kind of get us through the process. And that's been a benefit in the long run. So
I feel like Corey's practically a dedicated employee at the way things are going.
Sometimes,
Yes.
sometimes, but that is a nice aspect of being able to work, is to be able to pop in as managed services and as their customer success manager, is to help Michelle with the things that she can't tackle, and don't let her sell herself short. She is really, really well versed in Salesforce and knows the system far better than most folks that you would imagine. You know, especially for a CEO to be able to pop into Salesforce and be like, I know where everything is, and I can move things and objects and create formulas and do some pretty incredible stuff. So it's really nice to work alongside her and help supplement when she needs it.
I suspect this relationship, the managed services relationship we keep alluding to, is probably something that warrants some sort of follow-up conversation or a topic in its own right. But I do think that's one of the things that over the years that has proven really effective about the relationship between Craftsman and OTRL is that, you know, Corey's been kind of the on point, but he can also draw from our bench, right? Ideally, the way we can partner up is that, you know, I think, Michelle, ideally you'd have 5 people on staff, right? That would do this. You'd have an admin, you'd have a developer, you'd have an architect, you'd have and the reality is you would never bear that cost, right? There's no organization, you know, 100 times the size that would want to maintain that sort of capacity, because you don't always need a developer. You just sometimes need a developer. And when you do, you often need them right now. And you don't want to go to Craigslist for it. You want to ask Corey to grab one of the developers who knows the environment to create that automation that allows you to get out, you know, a pandemic response or a hurricane in the Gulf response or the equivalent, right? So that, I think that relationship is something that I think over the years, you know, we've had the good fortune to really work with OTRL to kind of help perfect that, and to go through kind of different iterations to figure out like what's the right soup or what's the right mix of resources that we can bring to bear, because, you know, there's times when you need something in a pinch and you don't want to have to onboard or find that person. You want to know that person's right there, you know, available to you. So.
Yeah, and I'd also just add real quickly to that I have found that everybody that we've worked with at your team have all been fantastic. And I mean, really easy to work with. And I think that's a real testament to your ability to hire and manage good people.
Thank you, Michelle, VJ, and Joe and Corey, of course. From Andrew, and I think we have time for just the last 2 questions here. From Andrew, how much Salesforce customization would be required for a variety of business lending products, various forms of security collateral, loan guarantees, types of loan products, etc.? We have lots of custom arrangements in many loans.
Yeah, I think you could do all kinds of things within Salesforce. Again, we don't use it for actually servicing our loans. We do that within a different platform. But I mean, you can customize Salesforce for everything. And I don't think there would be any difficulty with that at all.
I'll just piggyback on that just a bit. And we're not a software company, right? We're a services operation that primarily works with CDFIs. So we have a common set of configuration we see. We're like, okay, well, here's business lending or consumer lending. Here's high volume. Here's low volume. Here's economic development. Here's collateral. But here's all the different components. So a lot of times we can really rapidly deploy an organization or extend an organization on the platform because we sort of have that library of knowledge, right? So one of the challenges is one thing that's a little bit daunting about Salesforce is you kind of look at it and you say, wow, it's a wide open plain. Sure, I can build the house of my dreams, but you know, I need a couple of bathrooms and a couple a kitchen, and it sure would be helpful if I had those starting points. And that's what we try to bring as a partner to the table, is to say, you know, I truly believe no two CDFIs are exactly alike. And that's more than just like a cultural thing, that's an operational thing. But we have these kind of configured elements where we can say, hey, this is the mix we're seeing here, and being able to put those pieces into place and then kind of, work to make them true to your own is, we hope that by engaging, we have an advanced starting point on a lot of that both decreases the cost to deploy and frankly decreases the risk of kind of starting with just a wide open field, right? You should have those structural pieces ready for you. So.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you, Andrew, for asking that question. It is now 2:59 p.m. Eastern. Those of you who need to drop off, please feel free to do so. I want to, Juan did have one more question, so I wanted to give him an opportunity to ask it, but otherwise, everyone else, if you need to go, thank you so much. Juan, it says, we use SharePoint for our document management. Are you able to do everything you've been able to do with Box, like automatically create a folder and move documents with SharePoint?
I would think so. Some of our team use SharePoint for document management. I don't use it much, but I think it would be able to go into Salesforce pretty easily.
Great. It's one of the more common document solutions. Some of the more exotic stuff, we have to create a more complicated handoff, but SharePoint for sure.
Awesome. All righty. Well, thanks, everyone. That concludes our Q&A session. Brad will be following up with the CDFIs who are here, and really appreciate your time.